Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so excited about this live chat tonight. It has been a long time coming. I'm really excited to discuss this very important topic with my dear friend and mystic and fellow astrologer, Alyssa. So Alyssa will be joining us tonight. And let me just actually send her the invite to join. I'm really, really excited. There's been a lot of chatter about the Western Tropical Zodiac and the astrology. So I want to really discuss this topic. Yes, Alyssa's here. Let me accept. Live tonight, we are going to define the three zodiacs, and then we're going to go into deeper discussions around the tropical zodiac and really discuss the points raised regarding the validity of tropical astrology. Hi, Alyssa. Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome. So excited. Alyssa and I have been back and forth, just sharing ideas, feelings, discoveries, moments of confusion with what is going on, like what is really like these three different zodiacs. We are just so excited to share our discoveries as it's been on our minds for days and weeks. So this has been a long time coming. So I already went through what we're gonna go over for the live, what we'll discuss. So, Alyssa, how are you at this moment?
At this moment, I am happy that, we've kind of taken on this whole process. I feel like I personally am someone that really makes an effort to seek out structure for anything that I find compelling or validating for that matter. I am kind of always immediately driven to seek out like a counter argument or what's the alternative. Does it make sense? Does it sort of, stand up? People will say. So, obviously to share that with someone and that process of just, investigating and inquiring and not really in a pursuit of truth or rightness, but just for the sake of really coming to an understanding that's a bit deeper than, maybe what is kind of on the surface often, has just been really great. So I'm happy that we're kind of, starting and initiating the conversation.
Yeah. And I just want to share too that we are not here to convert anyone to say Western tropical astrology in this perspective. And we just want to present some ideas. And actually, it would be amazing if you even walk away from this with more questions than answers. And so we just want to present, our discoveries, what the foundations of the tropical zodiac are from our studies and experiences and what we've learned, and then open up, the conversation of how this can expand and evolve and grow as a practice. So,
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
I guess if I was just going to add anything, we are very aware that this is a very subjective and nuanced subject. So definitely bear with us as we try to be, objective, but also compassionate towards each perspective. I think that any discussion or debate that kind of is rooted in aggression and not a willingness to really see how really all things are one and the same is kind of missing the mark. So we are being really mindful of that, and we do really want to hold space for whatever your unique belief system is, right? Because that's kind of what this is all rooted in, right? We all want to find meaning, and we all want to, connect with something, right? And however you're doing that, if it supports you, we're not here to say that it's incorrect. We're not here to say that it's wrong. like Urania said, we just want to kind of fine tune some of the details that perhaps are being overlooked and perhaps aren't being considered. So that's
Awesome. And so one of the things that Alyssa and I really felt was the first initial approach to all of this and to your own practice with astrology essentially is your intention, your why, and really sitting with why maybe you've been attracted to astrology, why you like it, how is it supportive for you, and essentially like what do you want to get out of it? You know, what is it doing for you essentially, and how is it connected within your own like daily life and connection to the nature and the world around us, right? And so yeah, let's open up the space to those of you watching, and if you're watching the replay, let us know your why you love astrology or how you utilize it, and just your feelings and your thoughts when it comes to this specific topic here.
yeah. And if you don't feel compelled to share it publicly, maybe you jot some things down in a notebook just for your own sake. We're going to try to pose as many questions as possible throughout this live. Again, our goal is to deepen our own understanding, to perhaps help spark your own pursuit of deeper understanding. So if you want to share that with us, if you want to jot that down for your own notes, anything like that, just to sort of help us all kind of come around and get clarity really on what we're doing. And then I think, we can share our own. Urania, do you want to share first your personal experience?
Yeah, I think that taking it back to when I was first introduced to astrology, more so beyond sun sign, it was a bit shocking for me because my birthday is January 20th. And from reading magazines, obviously with sun sign astrology and reading your horoscope, especially as a teenager, I would always see Capricorn. So I assumed I was a Capricorn. And when I actually had my birth charts drawn for me, I think I did it online. But when I saw that, I didn't realize I was actually an Aquarius, like right at that 0 degree mark. And so that was already like my mind was blown. And I just was so confused, but also very curious and intrigued, and then started looking into it more. But what it really boiled down to, and the way I experienced astrology from the beginning, was more experiential, where I just connected with the moon phases, worked it into like the little rituals and spells that I was doing at the time. And it kind of went on from there. And the way I even got into astronomy from there was my love for the planet. Like I was actually started as environmental science. Then when I went to transfer to school in Colorado, it expanded to astronomy in general, right? So there was always like this love to gain a deeper understanding with Earth and the connection here. And I just felt like there was something deeper. And so now where I am, my practice and my perspective of astrology is very earth-based in a sense, or very grounded. And through my grounded, like say, anchor here in my place on Earth, I then connect into the planets and then, stars. And it's just, this is my anchor, but it's all about, at the end of the day, connecting with the divine, right? And how I can kind of integrate that energy within my own life, and pay tribute to the divine, in every single place, that exists around me in nature. So that's essentially my why. And I've seen the benefits and the miracles and the synchronicities that come along with that type of connection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what about you?
Kind of similar in the same way. I always kind of joke, I don't know if I've said this directly to you, but I'm always like, I wish that, we could have gone to astronomy school
Right.
together. But for me, definitely, I'm definitely, another earth person. I like to say, very grounded, and I'm always seeking out different practices that will connect me with nature and help me feel more connected to my environment on a macrocosmic and a microcosmic level as well. And the moon is, one of the first teachers for many of us, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember not really understanding astrology as a teen, getting like the horoscopes in magazines and whatnot, but never really going much further than that. And then starting to study astrology without really any formal teaching. And then of course in my pursuit for more, because I'm like a sponge and always so hungry to whatever I can use, I want to use it. And I downloaded Stellarium and I got sky gazing apps, and I'm definitely more experiential as well. I'm more so out in the world sky gazing, and I remember the first time I realized that the chart was not aligned with what I was seeing, I felt like this total like disillusioned and just sort of like, it doesn't make sense. What am I going to do now? Kind of like panic sets in. And then I think it was shortly after that I found sacred astronomy with Gemini Brett.
Nice.
And that really helped, I think, to quell a lot of the anxieties I was feeling, because I did learn this whole other component that I hadn't heard before. And I mean, I've been asking fellow astrologers, friends, colleagues, how often do you find this particular information, XYZ? We'll share that in a few moments. But it's kind of like few and far between, if mentioned at all, and these are very real terrestrial things. And that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in how can I live my life in a way that complements and connects me with my environment. So that's why I love astrology. It helps me do that. It helps me connect deeper with parts of myself. I'm kind of a stickler, and I'm going to be opinionated about anything. It's going to be that I really have disdain for people who try to speak of themselves as being solely their sun sign. And I think that that's really important as well to bring into the conversation, because we possess all archetypes and they, come out through us in many different ways in many different parts of our life. So that being said, that's probably a whole other live that we could do. But
Yeah.
in short, yes, I think we're both very earth-based. We're both looking for connection. We're looking for a way to understand ourselves deeper, understand, the great mystery, the great conversation a bit deeper. And, my hope is that that's what most of us are doing, that we're not looking for validation, that we're not looking for anything that's going to sort of just keep us on a surface level of being, but that's going to really pull us into having a more meaningful experience, right? And I think I'll cut myself off there.
Nice, like we can keep going. Yeah, so for those of you watching, if you had that experience of the realization with tropical astrology and that zodiac, how it's not aligned to the constellations, like where the constellations are now. And in that experience, what kind of feelings came up for you. So I'll share too that I was practicing astrology for a good little while and even was doing it professionally before I really kind of faced that fact. Like I felt that I've heard it in passing, but it didn't really like settle in until maybe a couple years ago. And I remember my rationale was just like, it was simple. I was like, oh, it's aligned to the seasons. Like, there you go. Like that makes sense. And I didn't really contemplate the Southern Hemisphere, right? And now that we have, social media and I'm more present and I'm connecting with other astrologers. And again, that opened up more questions about, well, they're using our same system and it works there. So, okay, what's really going on here, right? Like for me, it wasn't that I needed to know the fine details of how it works, But then I don't know, I just wanted to again go deeper and really get grounded in this practice. And so I think this is probably a good, segue, Alyssa, for us to define the three different zodiacs, because I didn't even realize that, I knew of sidereal, I knew of tropical, but there are actually, many different zodiacs, but we have three main ones that we're going to discuss tonight. So the first one is tropical astrology, tropical zodiac, Western astrology. We're all familiar with that. And so with the tropical zodiac, there are 30-degree realms aligned to the cardinal direction. So when you consider the tropical zodiac, the anchors of this zodiac, of the system, are the cardinal, you could say the cardinal signs, but essentially the cardinal directions or cardinal points. So that being the Tropic of Capricorn, the first point of Aries, the Tropic of Cancer, and then that first point of Libra, right? Those are the anchors. And those essentially are the bounds of the sun, or at least the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer mark the bounds of the sun, right? So the sun will not go any more southern than the Tropic of Capricorn, and it won't reach any like more north. I guess you could say its northern bound is the Tropic of Cancer. And then that first point of Aries and the first point of Libra are the halfway points, right? And those are marked along the celestial equator. So Alyssa, you probably can explain this a little bit better too than me, I feel.
Well, it starts to get, I think, confusing for people because we are normally speaking in terms of seasons, and people are probably familiar with hearing that cardinal signs, sort of are what we're aligned to. We kind of have to, and it's hard to do this without visuals. I might say, I invite you to, for a moment, close your eyes and try to really imagine the sun in the center of the solar system and the earth moving around it. What's happening when we're at an equinox, let's use the Aries equinox, for example, is at midday when the sun culminates and rests at our midheaven at the meridian. We are looking at a sun that behind that sun, we are looking global east. We are looking east in space. How is it east? Why is it east? Did we make that up? Does it come from Aries? It's like that chicken or egg argument. What this is defined by are the poles. The North Pole points north, and if that is north, then at Cancer solstice, at June solstice, when the North Pole is sort of angled, tilted towards the Tropic of Cancer, right? It's not just the Tropic of Cancer. It could be called anything. The fact remains, and it is an astronomical fact, that the North Pole and Earth's tilt is pointing towards global north. Mm-hmm. So these directions are global directions. It's a little different than your local north, south, east, west. They're strictly aligned to this sort of spine. I think Gemini Brett, what does he say? The spine of Gaia.
Yeah.
It's our global poles, North Pole and South Pole, and where we truly face. When we're looking towards the sun, we're looking towards that direction. So if we're working with the directions, this is an Earth-based system. It's a sun-based system. We should be well aware as tropical astrologers of this distinction. So this is a terrestrial thing. It's a solar system. We're watching the sun move from its northern bounds to its southern bounds, solstice to solstice, and we are honoring the energy of those points, right? And the seasons are dependent on which hemisphere you're in. And when we're honoring a season and we're honoring, both hemispheres, it's also important to note that we're honoring a polarity of signs. So if anyone is thinking, well, if we're going to be doing Aries in the spring, that doesn't work because it's the fall in the southern hemisphere. It's Aries season, and the lunar cycle culminates with the Libra full moon. We're working with that balancing pair, as we always do with every pair of signs. So it's never about one sign either. I think that's another important point to clarify. So tropical zodiac, solar zodiac, terrestrial zodiac, solstice based, and nothing to do with stars. Founded in stars because at one point, right, many years ago, they aligned, and we do honor precession of equinoxes. We do, we're aware of that. I think if you're not aware of that, or if you're ignoring that, probably have some homework to do. But we need to be clear on that.
Yeah.
If you're going to use tropical astrology and you're going to use the tropical zodiac, you need to be clear on these foundations. And that's really nothing more needs to be said outside of that, I think.
Yeah. So I just want to say, if anyone has, I see some questions coming through. Kettle Buddha, shout out to you, Lewis. I see your questions. So we'll answer those, but moving forward, if you all can put your questions in the question bubble, that will be really helpful so we don't lose it in the chat. But yeah, no, I really, yes, that's what we want to get clear for the tropical zodiac, right? The Western astrology. Essentially, it's earth-based, right? We're looking at, from our perspective on Earth, how the sun is moving through our skies within that yearly motion, right? And so even when you break down the terminology, tropical or tropic is basically derived from tropicos, which means to turn around, right? And so when we consider the bounds of the sun's path from our perspective on Earth, that southern bound being the Tropic of Capricorn, and then the northern bound being the Tropic of Cancer, when the sun reaches those tropic points, that is when we experience the solstice moment. And again, thinking about the language that we're using and what we're experiencing, when the sun reaches that most southern point, that it can, as far as it can go south, and that is going to be, Capricorn solstice, December solstice, in the northern hemisphere winter solstice. That's the moment where the sun stops, right? It stops at that point and turns around and then begins to ascend or travel upward towards that northern bound, right? And this is all from our perspective here on Earth. And once it reaches that northern bound, again, that's the Cancer solstice, June solstice here in the northern hemisphere, that's the summer solstice. That's the point when we see the sun stand still and then turn around and do it again, right? And so that is the relationship that we're pointing to. And when the sun passes through that first point of Aries and that first point of Libra, that's when we experience that equal light or equal day and night, even though technically it doesn't happen on the day of the solstice. But that is what we're observing, where the subpolar point is shining directly over that first point of Aries or first point of Libra along the celestial equator, right? And so this is, again, the experience of the cardinal directions and our perspective here on Earth in relation to the sun's movement. So those points, as far as the bounds of the sun, those actually don't change. We're not changing the Tropic of Capricorn to Tropic of Sagittarius. We're not changing the Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Gemini. Essentially, if you look, those are the bounds of the tropics, and they're the bounds of the tropics because, again, from our perception on Earth, the sun's gets to those points. Those are the points basically in which the sun is shining directly over the surface of Earth, right? And it would be so helpful. At some point, we'll have to do like a Zoom meeting with this to have actual visuals, because when you see it visually, it's easier to comprehend and conceptualize. But those points are fixed, and that is, again, why we are calling it the tropical zodiac, because we're dealing with that process or experience of the sun's journey of essentially stopping and changing directions, stopping and changing directions, and that whole cycle.
Right. We're basically aligning the archetypal sequence with the solar journey. And this is why we have sacred sites that honor these moments, right? If you go to Stonehenge, if you go to many of these places where solar light will fill, spaces and shine through very specific monuments, this is what we're doing. We're honoring these points of the year. So I think we'll leave that there, and place that down for a moment and just move on towards the other two, which again, we probably are familiar with. Sidereal astrology, which is more closely connected with Vedic astrology. That's the system Vedic astrologers use. There's also Western astrologers that do use the sidereal zodiac. And the sidereal zodiac is aligned to fixed stars. However, it still designates 30-degree realms in space. Now, there is a third zodiac, which is being called the constellational zodiac, or you might see it worded as the true sidereal zodiac. So there is a difference between sidereal and true sidereal. The true sidereal or constellational zodiac is following the IAU, the International Astronomy Union. Is that what that stands for, right?
Yeah.
The constellational boundaries of that system. So this is more based in the stars, where our tropical zodiac is more based on the solar cycle, Earth's directions, right? We're starting to see now how these things differ, which again is not to say one is incorrect, right? Like we mentioned earlier, we're in pursuit of meaning, we're in pursuit of connection. And as long as we're finding our way there, again, with awareness of what we're doing in the first place and not just kind of blindly saying, well, it is what it is. We don't want to be doing that. We might learn actually, to utilize all systems. And just like a small tangent, if that's okay, we see the argument about house systems a lot, right? And people are kind of just as much of a stickler about house system as they are sometimes about zodiac. I personally use 3 different house systems. I'll use 0 Aries if I'm looking at long-term transits. I'll use Porphyry if I want to know where exactly celestial bodies are in the sky. I'll use Whole Sign if I'm doing something more ritualistic and magical, and I really want to hone in on the energetics of the moment. So I also believe that there's a time and a place for everything. If I'm going out to do moon gazing, I'm going to acknowledge, say, the moon being in the constellation of Leo if I see the moon near Regulus. But I'm also going to know that if I'm thinking of where the moon is in relation to the sun and the whole solar cycle of the year, I know enough, because I've made it a point to study this, that Regulus aligns to 0 Virgo. So maybe we can, again, do a little bit more on our personal ends to just understand how all of this, kind of comes together. And I think if we do broaden our perspective, we can glean so much more from the practice than, perhaps trying to stay boxed in or just try to fight over really semantics. Sometimes it seems, I know we've kind of made that joke. But there is validity here in all things to be considered. So I think that's just really important, right? So I don't know if you want to add to that, or I'll just summarize really quickly again the 3 more briefly.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we have tropical zodiac aligned to cardinal directions of the earth. It's an earth experience. It's a terrestrial thing, and it is watching the solar cycle, and we're leaning into that with tropical astrology. Then there's sidereal astrology, which has 2 parts, either being the traditional sidereal, which is still using 30-degree realms, but is more closely fixed to the stars, and then constellational or true sidereal. I'm only quoting it because just to differentiate. And that third one is using IAU constellational boundaries. And if you are interested in learning more about constellational astrology, if you're kind of sparked by that, um, I would suggest looking into Athan Chimenti. He does Mastering the Zodiac, and it's very comprehensive as far as true sidereal goes. I believe he's even made his own system for utilizing the IAU boundaries, because there are some discrepancies. But even within sidereal as like a whole, there are still varying beliefs. There's still different like micro differences of degrees, um, and I personally, again, I am going to continue to look to both. I'm going to continue using the tropical zodiac because I do live seasonally, and it does bring me a sense of meaning that I can know exactly where the moon or Jupiter will rise based on the tropical degree because I know where to find it in the sky. So that's another component, right? We do need to have this lived experience where we are connecting with the sky. We can't, just be in the charts on the computer, on the phone. We need to also understand how that relates
Mhm.
to what's actually happening. And maybe add, because I'm going to keep rambling because that's just what happens.
Oh, I feel like that's the biggest thing. That's where the disconnect comes when I feel a lot of astrologers and astrology enthusiasts desire to, after looking and connecting with everything in the charts, we desire to go out and look in the sky and connect in that way. And then now we actually have, apps on our phone where we can just hold it up and it'll share exactly where things are in the sky. And maybe that wasn't so readily available, years ago, but now it's here at our fingertips and we're all questioning like, what is going on? And I think it's really important, and I do the same thing as well, that when I'm out looking at the night sky and say connecting with Venus or the moon, I definitely take into account the constellations that they're in, not necessarily for interpretation. I think about it in the context of the story, possibly with that constellation. And when I am gazing in that way, it's more of I'm receiving the quote unquote download or the energy or the message from, whatever celestial being I'm connecting with. And then, and this is my own personal share, my own practice, but then after that moment, when I come back and say into the home and I look at the astrology or compare it to my chart, depending on what has been received, I then take note of my own personal astrology and the connection of, the internal and the external in the whole experience of what I have experienced. And I think that, Alyssa and I had discussed how just witnessing, people sharing their feelings, their perspectives on these different zodiac systems, um, at the core of it really is that we just want deeper connection with the divine, right? And it feels very reminiscent to the experience when it comes to spirituality, where there is, a back and forth of, no, this is my God, or that's, this is the right God, this is the right practice, or this is the right way to do the things. And there's no right way, right? There's no, so many people use Western tropical astrology and it works, right? If it works for you, then it works. And, it's okay to expand and, consider sidereal astrology, true sidereal, whatever resonates and whatever allows you to invite and experience that deeper connection with the divine. I think that is what's most important. And Alyssa and I have also kind of joked around about when we were diving deep into the different zodiac systems, how it's like we're just kind of throwing around, it's semantics about where the starting point is on a circle. That's literally what we're doing. Like at the end of the day, this is all kind of a debate on where is the first point of Aries, because that is the beginning of the cycle, right? That's the beginning of the journey, right? So where do we place that? Do we evolve with the changing stars and the procession, or are we more anchored into the earth experience? And again, that's why we essentially started out the conversation with, why do you like astrology? How do you use astrology? What's your goal here? And that is essentially where you want to start, because again, there's no right way to approach this complex, beautiful, nature. And yeah, so there's my rant.
Always like warranted at least one good rant in a conversation. But I keep coming back to this lyric by band that I love, which is Pussifer. And there's a lyric where he says, until three people can simultaneously look each other straight in the eye, we cannot know peace. And I just feel like the theme of this like really just strongly relates to like every existential philosophical debate we could find, right? Where it's like, if our motives are rooted in just wanting to be correct or to be supreme. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned this to you, and I'll share this story now while we're kind of like in this space. I used to be very adamant about being anti-religion, and I thought it was just a complete disservice to a mystical lifestyle. And I was always so, frustrated by the fact that people really thought that they could only worship the divine if they went to this specific building, and that it wasn't shared, that other cultures are doing things differently and it's just as magical. And now I'm kind of in a place where I'm just happy if anyone is seeking more and seeking more meaning. And if we're trying to find inspiration in our life, if we're trying to find joy in our life, and we're trying to find a sense of comfort in our life, and these are kind of my three pillars of how I live and how I do things, are always just sort of being aware of these three things. If we're seeking to do that, I mean, do it however you can, however you're able to. But again, don't lie. Don't say things like someone else is doing it wrong. I've literally heard sidereal astrologers say that tropical astrology has never been connected with anything astronomical. And that's simply not true. You might not want to use the system, but we can't lie about its roots. Additionally, these facts are kind of hard to come by. Again, not many people are even aware of that. They're just sort of given the system and kind of run with it. Just fine. We're more focused on the energetic, on the spiritual. Like you said, you bring your chart back, you bring, your sky experience back, and you look at your chart. I think that we can do a little bit better to be more aware of these more intricate details of the foundations. And, I for a moment, I was sitting there last night thinking, wow, maybe we change solstice energies with the precession of the equinoxes, and maybe we're living in the age of the Sagittarius Gemini solstices, and maybe that defines like some great period. And the truth is, in 11,000 years, I think it'll flip, right? At some point we're gonna have Cancer at where Capricorn solstice is. At some point we're going to have Capricorn where the Aries equinox point is. So if that's a constant cycle, the same way Jupiter comes around and returns, right, to a point, the same way anything comes around and returns to a point. And we all agree that Aries is this initiatory, forward momentum, start of things. Then why not let that just be that, right? So again, there's so much complexity. There's so much to consider. I like to keep things simple. I know you like to keep things simple. I like to work with the earth. I like to work with what I can feel, with what I can see. I'm going to continue going out at night and doing my sacred sky gazing, utilizing the constellational zodiac. And I'm going to go home and I'm going to journal, and I'm going to meditate on the fact that I saw, Jupiter near the Pleiades, say, and I'm going to sit with that experience, and I'm going to say, wow, how does that relate to my tropical astrology, where Jupiter might not be in Taurus, but now there's this more mystical, spiritual energy that I contemplate as it relates to where the sun would be if it was traveling along the ecliptic. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we defined ecliptic. And if we're not sure, if anyone is not sure what that means, that is simply the sun's apparent path in our skies. So the ecliptic is where the sun travels. Really, it's our orbit around the sun. And this really has everything to do with where we're measuring these solstice points. And that is an astronomical thing. So if I say that Jupiter is at 30 degrees celestial longitude, or 30 degrees tropical Taurus, right? 30 degrees, there is no 30 degrees, it would be 0 degrees. That's what I meant to say. 0 degrees tropical Taurus equates to 30 degrees celestial longitude, right? So we're measuring the same things there as well. And that's, again, going a bit deeper. We wanted to really just clarify the foundation. I don't want to get distracted again. So where are we now?
Yeah, a good time to answer some questions. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to put them in the question bubble. So I'm going to go over the questions that I see here and the questions and comments I see here in the chat. I'm just scrolling back. So Kettle Buddha says, isn't one goal to acquire all good traits of all signs, like good communication of a Gemini, nurturing abilities of a Cancer, etc.? And I think you responded to that, Alyssa. Absolutely. And I agree. That's the thing. We all literally have, all the archetypes are within us. When you really look at it from a like zoomed out perspective, like even say you don't have any planets in Cancer, you know, where's the moon, right? Because there's that indication of that Cancer energy coming through within, you know, your experience. I don't know if you want to add to that.
I think it's good to mention, with that being said, if you do feel inclined to shift or incorporate a different zodiac system, don't feel so disgruntled if one or two things are changing placement. I am an Aries sun in tropical astrology. In Vedic astrology, that moves me to a Pisces sun. I think we need to really sit in that moment and notice what our, you know, kind of visceral, like, immediate reaction is to that. If we're immediately feeling like, oh, well, now I'm no longer validated in all my idiosyncrasies and behaviors, I think we have a problem. I think that really a more mindful way to receive that information, than the way I receive it at least, is, you know, wow, that's something to consider. How else in my tropical chart did I embody the sign of Pisces? Where did that come up? And just know that at any point that's going to change, and no one specific thing is ever going to be like the end all be all. So if you're resistant to changing systems strictly because of a few sign changes, you know, your sun, this or that, maybe let that go for a moment. Maybe, you know, meditate on that, reflect on that. Maybe that's an invitation to do some work on stepping outside of your placements altogether, and just doing some journaling on, how do I embody Aries? How do I embody Taurus? How do I embody Gemini? And just look at them, you know, stand alone for a moment before layering on, you know, your house or your Mars or whatever. And I think this also, you know, really helps us to go deeper, is to just sort of feel into the archetypes as they are before we even bring ourselves into the picture. So just wanted to add that to that comment.
Yeah, and one of the things Alyssa and I were talking about earlier today is, or I think it was yesterday, but I have a friend, a family friend, who is a Vedic astrologer, who also had studied Hellenistic, and she is very like connected to Vedic, like that's her thing. And I know we've had conversations. I know it's because she also feels more connected to what I guess you could say Vedic, you know, prescribes for how her personality and such are, like her life and her own, you know, archetypes. And but her and I have had conversations as well, and we've done readings on people that we know in common from different, like I'll do it from Hellenistic, she'll do it from Vedic, and
Oh,
we both come to the same interpretation, right? We both come to the same end result, just from a different route, a different dynamic, right? But it's all leading us to the same essence, the same core of, you know, whatever we're connecting with when we're looking at the energies presented within this chart. So again, that just speaks to the just the knowing or the understanding that we all hold the archetypes within us, and we all have a unique connection and story with that. And so at the end of the day, you could never see your birth chart and still connect with that, the essence of the story of who you are and how that unfolds, right? So again, there's no one right way to that self-discovery, to going even deeper within yourself and connecting with the divine as well.
yeah.
So Kettlebell says, this is another comment slash question, I think. So yeah, how can Western astrology be accurate if they don't consider the degree shifts that happened 200 years ago, roughly speaking? Hmm. So
I
again,
think it just comes back to that original consideration, right? Is that, are we going to continue to work with the solar cycle? And I think this brings up another kind of Pandora's box, because we might say things like, you know, that's sort of the foundation, that's what it's built upon, so we're keeping it the same. And then there are going to be people who want to be more progressive, and it gets a little risky. And I think we start to sometimes veer off into what we keep referring to as change for the sake of change, without really a deeper contemplation towards what that would really entail. But you know, it's, why would we kind of cherry pick what we're going to change, right? If the system is designed for Aries to begin and for Pisces to sort of dissolve into the next, and if we have things like correspondences, like frankincense for the sun or orange for Mercury, why are some things okay to keep the same and why are some things not okay? Of course, it's observable, right? And it's because of the stars, but it's what we learn from the stars and then experience here on Earth. And our Earth experience is going unchanged. The sun is not rising in a completely different spot. The sun is not setting in a completely different spot. These things are really what our practice, you know, are grounded in. And I think it just becomes a matter of personal preference, right? We're not looking to get right answers because we're not looking to get results.
mm-hmm.
We're looking to get insights. We're not looking for specific answers or outcomes. We're not trying to predict the future or, you know, fortune tell here. We're looking to find some deeper meaning and deeper understanding to life's mysteries and personal inquiry and moments of confusion, moments of, you know, where am I now? What am I doing now? You know, how can I feel more connected to the moment? How can I feel more connected to myself? How can I feel more connected to others? And that's really what we're after. So again, do we honor the changes? I mean, maybe these are questions we can continue to ask.
Yeah.
What would that mean, you know, to shift the solstice energies, right? And shift the whole thing completely. Well, are we going to shift the meaning of all of the archetypes completely? You know, I don't know. How would that work? And again, I never say any of this to say that, you know, it's incorrect. It's, I love considering possibility. I love, you know, wondering what else there could be. But it seems to me, you know, in the same way that I practice yoga, which is a very ancient tradition, there are things that we just follow because this is the way was handed down to us. Again, which isn't to say like don't follow things blindly, right? There's so much nuance and it's so subjective.
It's like, go with your own energy, your own intuition, your own inner guidance. Like what might not work for you may be okay with someone else when it comes to that, the changing of the practices, the times, the systems, everything is changing. That's the only thing that is constant, right? And just a reminder that the tropical zodiac is not based on the stars, right? Yes, the signs have the same names as a constellation, but they're not one and the same, essentially. And again, as we mentioned, the bounds of the sun, that's not changing, right? Those specific points. And the equinoxes, those points are not changing as well. So I even expressed this to Alyssa, and just with the seasonal concept of like, well, the seasons kind of line up with the archetypes and the changing between the equinoxes and the solstices. And, there is the argument that tropical astrology is based on the seasons. And I just, in reflection, I was thinking, with even climate change, I was like, actually, if tropical Western astrology was based on the seasons, then we would actually be the signs would be moving forward, right? Because essentially, consider spring. So consider Aries, right? The first point of Aries, the spring equinox here in the Northern Hemisphere. Technically, it's Pisces constellation that's, present at that time, or the sun's in Pisces, essentially, constellation. But what we're experiencing as far as seasonal changes in March, it's still winter pretty much. Like spring comes a little bit later. So it's like that connection is even diverging in a way, right? And so again, we have to really consider our intention, our why. And if we're making these changes, it's like, it's a lot.
I think that really, if we want to bring this into a more experiential way to see things, if you're following tropical astrology, you're going to be able to celebrate, let's use the example of summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. You're going to experience the height of the light, the high sun. You're going to see it move through the windows of your house. You're going to see it hit the trees and cast specific shadows. In the Southern Hemisphere, the opposite is true. It'll be winter solstice. It's still an experience of the light. These are seasons of light. And as you go across, the wheel, as you move through the year, you'll see the light change. You'll feel the light change. You'll be able to look towards the sun and know which direction we're facing in space, which to me is amazing and beautiful. And if you're practicing constellational astrology, you're not going to have that experience. However, once the sun sets and the stars are revealed, you'll be able to track planets and celestial bodies through actual constellations. Now, we can do both of these things. I said earlier, I do both of these things. So let's not be so quick to discredit the tropical system, because the shifting of the light is so important to our human experience. And there's so much else out there that coincides with this. We have elemental seasons, we have all these different periods and things that we can do to align ourselves better with the shifting of the light. And to honor the shifting of the light is one of the most human things we can do as earthlings. And I just don't want to lose sight of that,
Yeah.
And I still want to honor being able to go out and be familiar and have relationships with the constellations and the stars and learn the star names and know where they align to when we compare it to this solar ecliptic path. Getting to know that is probably the best thing that we can do for ourselves. And I do that as often as I can with anyone I can, just to point out constellations, star names, and knowing what stars are out during which season, and like you said, being able to bring it back home, sit with it in meditation, sit with it in reflection, and transpose it. It's like a piece of music. It might sound different through a different instrument, but we're still playing the same melodies. We're still after the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is wonderful and amazing that we can even do that. I think that life is only as rich as if we have variety, right? Like I said earlier, the religions, I would love if everyone just resigned themselves from their dogma and just, worshiped the divine in any and every form. But if people come to it in a different way, that's beautiful and that's amazing. And at least we're all, seeking meaning. For us astrologers to have something tangible, right? To have the sun, to have the stars, that's great. Maybe we designate new terms, new words. I don't know, how to really rectify some of these like more particular issues that people seem to have, but there are truths to all of these systems. That was our point.
Yeah.
Everything is astronomical. We're not really doing anything that, is wholly arbitrary, right? There are really important points to be made. I think we've made them. I'm pretty sure at this point we're going to be like a little redundant.
We have like 2 more questions. Let me just see what they are.
Good.
I think they're pretty much okay. Let's see. Kettle Buddha tropic is focusing on the sun as true. Okay, so Kettle Buddha says, Kettle Buddha says if the tropic is focusing on the sun and its trajectory, how is my chart accurate? Sun, and I'm just trying to like process this in my head after all like the conversations. So let's see. Actually, I think I can put it up on the screen. Okay, do you see that there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if the tropic is focusing on the sun, so it's the Earth-Sun relationship, right? And so when you think about essentially that when you have your birth chart, right, and you have the 12 houses, right, those 12 houses or basically, I guess, the sky essentially designates 30-degree sections, which are those 12 houses essentially, that are specific to where you are when you were born, right? Where on earth you were when you were born. And so those 30-degree sections are essentially the same as what has been like reflected or projected out in consideration of the tropics and the equinoxes, right? If those are the four points, right? I don't know if I'm making this clear.
Do you think they're asking more? I think maybe the question is more about how are the signs correct if the zodiac is only considering the sun, I believe is their question.
Tropic is focusing on the sun. Oh, like how do the like other planets and signs?
Yeah, and if that's the question, then the answer would be that we're still measuring the relationship of, say, Jupiter, of Moon, of Mercury, of the planets as they also move along the ecliptic plane. Mm-hmm. So if let's say you had Mars, or that probably would never work, but let's say you had Mercury at, I don't know, 10 degrees tropical Cancer. That would mean that if you go out on solstice day when the sun is at 0 tropical Cancer and you literally take your fist at arm's length and you extend it towards the sun, you won't see it, but you'll know that 10 degrees from that solar solstice point is where your natal Mercury was when you were born. We're still measuring things against the ecliptic path. We're still using the celestial sphere and we're still using celestial longitude in simpler terms, i.e. tropical Taurus, tropical Cancer. But it's basically where the celestial body is in relation to the solstice and equinox points. Hope that clears up, right? Because these are what the signs are. They're designations of space that follow and precede these 4 points. and these 4 directions, you know, and I think that in itself might be that this might be the first time people have heard this. I don't want to, you know, say these things quickly or gloss over them, because they are really powerful things to really sit with and realize that, you know, to say that your sun was in Cancer when you were born, or your moon was in Cancer when you were born, is not just to say that it was in some arbitrary space. That's a moon or a sun aligned with global north. It's a moon or a sun that is, you know, reaches that 23.5 degree angle towards, you know, the height of our sky in the northern hemisphere. And of course we have to, you know, make revisions for the southern hemisphere, but we need to really sit with what these things mean. That's kind of what I think I mentioned that earlier, you know, creating a sky practice, learning where the tropical zodiac aligns to the constellational zodiac, and being able to blend both. You know, I think that it's accurate in the sense that it is a real point, right?
It's like
if you look at
of the sky, like you're not looking at the constellations as orientation. So say if you were born with the sun in Cancer, you're not looking at that Cancer constellation that determines the orientation of that sun when you were born. It's more so of that longitude and space, right, of the sky, like that portion of the sky that was where the sun was when you were born, versus like it would be a lot more helpful too with visuals. You'd be able to like get your actual eyes on what's happening and the difference between like where the constellations are as opposed to the divisions of the sky in the 12 sections or 12 realms. I like how you use that. But yeah, it's easier to visualize when you have that like imagery.
And I've just sort of decided to start calling the tropical zodiac sky realms. Like I don't even refer to it as a zodiac. I will say sky realms, because to me that's what they are. It helps me in my physical practice when I go outside, and I do something I do a lot in my personal practice is I will meet the moon at moonrise, or I'll meet celestial bodies at the rise at the eastern horizon. If you become familiar with how the astronomy merges with the terrestrial practice, you'll know exactly where things will rise based on, you know, where they are. You know, we can remember where due east is if we connect with that equinox sunrise, or, you know, equinox sunset. We'll know where things set. And then for the rest of the year, anytime a planet moves through 0 Aries, you'll know exactly where it will be, and you'll be able to really feel the equinox point, and you'll be able to feel the solstice points. And this is really, you know, going much deeper. And I feel very compelled to write more about this, and maybe we can do a like series of smaller or shorter videos even. But if anyone is watching this in the future via replay and you have questions, obviously this will be on your page so people can comment. If you don't want to comment,
lab, so it'll be on both of our pages.
Oh, cool. Okay. And if you don't want to comment publicly and you want to start a conversation via DM, don't feel weird about that. Please talk to us, because we need to have more conversations around these things, and not in such a way that we're trying to disgrace anyone that doesn't agree with us. I don't really understand why some people have gone that route, and it's unfortunate, but we're not here to vilify anyone. We're here to make sense of things and just, you know, deepen the practice, really, first and foremost.
This is just a perfect opportunity for all of us to get clear on our whys, our intention. Why are we studying what we're studying? Why are we practicing what we're practicing? Does this really resonate, or are we just doing it, you know, for fear of change, right? It could go on both ends, where it's just like, I'm changing because I feel, you know, that I need to change and I need to evolve, and this is what's happening. Or you can be an experience of not wanting to let go and like fearing change. So that's, you know, something that could be coming up. And as we mentioned, sitting with, you know, what's in your space when you're hearing the different perspectives and the, you know, what arises within you and what drives your curiosity. And, you know, I'll just say as we're closing up, I, you know, I feel very grounded and I feel clear about what I practice. And at the same time, whatever this is, I felt so passionate to like talk about it, to share, to explore. And yeah, I just feel there's a lot of curiosity here, and there's a lot of room for expansion and connection between all the systems. And again, as Alyssa said, this is, you know, a perfect opportunity. If you want to learn more, definitely reach out, comment on the videos. And, you know, if people are into this, you know, sir, we'll talk more about it and we can go deeper. And again, I would love to do, you know, like a Zoom meeting or something where we kind of discuss these points with visuals and go deeper and hit, you know, different topics. And who knows, we might open up some new avenue or new perspective that will really connect, you know, the constellational zodiac with, you know, the tropical. And I'm really excited about what that could be.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think we said it from the start. We're not trying to answer questions. We want to create questions. I would love for new questions to arise that we haven't even considered yet. I think the more curious we are, if we're leading, you know, from the heart and we're really in pursuit of something more meaningful than just, you know, I'm an Aries and I'm this and I'm that. And, you know, we're really trying to deepen our experience, our true lived experience. There are endless possibilities, and to be open to that is to be open to really just living a fuller life. And however we get there, we're going to get there. And if it's through, you know, ignoring one thing and going another route, we just want to be mindful. We want to be respectful, and we want to be honest. We want to acknowledge the truth of what our practices are rooted in, revise them as we need to for our own sake, so that we're not feeling hopeless or we're not feeling stuck. And again, if any of this really is resonating, please stay with us. Please continue to connect with us. Connect with some of our sources, right? We mentioned GeminiBrett.com. He does a great Earth astrology course that you can go deeper with. Athen Chimenti does a great sidereal astrology course. He's created his own system. There are plenty of people that are, and you'll know when you hear people begin to express their thoughts, you know, what their values are rooted in. We always want to, you know, try to stick with people who seem to be, you know, looking out for all beings, right, and all beliefs, in this search for meaning and this never-ending journey. So I guess if you've made it this far with us, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.
yeah,
We're excited to talk more. This is really like just the tip of the iceberg. And I know we rambled, we wandered, but I think we did what we came to do.
and creating more questions, I'm sure. But thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for watching the replay. Again, please reach out to us if you want to hear more, if you have questions that arise. And yeah, we're excited to help and be a part of the journey. All right. Well, thank you, Alyssa. We'll be connecting, I'm sure, very soon. And we'll see you guys soon too. Take care.
Thank you.